make sure to follow us on Instagram at Whistlethrowers. It's a great way to interact with our show. Our DMs are always open for questions, topic discussions, and more. You will be able to find our new episodes and other announcements there.
And let's talk about Jokic's defense. Thanks for tuning back into the Whistlethrowers podcast. This is Jack Lombard, joined by
Jack Slaymaker.
So we got a lot for you guys today. There's been a crazy amount of moves in the NFL within the past few days, so I don't even know where to start. We could start Jimmy G with the Raiders.
Yeah, I think we should start there because that was something we were talking about last week. So
Yeah.
we finally got a conclusion of the answer. Where is Jimmy Garoppolo going?
He's in LA. He's in Las Vegas.
He's now a Las Vegas Raider. This is an interesting move by Vegas. I don't really know what they're doing as an organization because they re-signed Josh Jacobs to a 1-year contract, which they franchise tagged him actually, which a little bit strange. Maybe they'll try trading him in the middle of the season now that they have him under a team contract. It doesn't really make sense to keep him long term because he is going to be very expensive running back. When you look at the contract for him, he's not a quarterback to me, and I've said this before, that I feel like can win big games. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in Vegas, even though they do have a lot of talent. But to me, they're just not a very well set up organization to have a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo come in and win the games when he's the type of guy that needs to be able to win with a stacked team. And Vegas is definitely a complete downgrade from what San Francisco was. So I just don't see how this is going to work out.
Yeah, the whole Derek Carr situation makes no sense to me at this point.
Agreed.
You get rid of Derek Carr. I mean, granted he's expensive, but you get Jimmy G and you pay him a ridiculous amount of money. So what was this all for? Unless you want him to mentor Jarrett Stidham, and he's not a good mentor.
I think he left too.
Stidham's gone too.
Oh
Yeah.
shit!
Yeah.
So they're stuck with him.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
going to be him. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine they draft someone in quarterback.
Yeah. But then again, why pay Jimmy that contract just to draft a QB? I mean,
Yeah.
it just doesn't really make any... It's kind of backwards to me, and I feel like there are better options. If you're going to pay Jimmy a contract like that, but not pay Derek Carr a little bit more, I just don't... that just seems like kind of a backwards move. Not saying that it's a bad move to move off of Derek Carr. I just don't understand moving off of Carr just to go to a QB that's lesser than Carr and pay him a good amount of money. He's not making what Carr got, but he's making a good amount of your salary cap right there yearly. And that just seems kind of backwards, like what Aiden was saying too. And another thing we've talked about all the time when we talk about Garoppolo is how he was put really on a pedestal by the 49ers talent and stuff. And even then, his pedestal wasn't that high. He wasn't that good of a quarterback in San Fran. Coming to a team that has significantly less talent than San Fran, and they just traded away Darren Waller. I don't know what they're doing right now. Having Devontae Adams, Renfro, Jacobs, and Waller is okay, Jimmy G can do something with that at least. Maybe sneak in as a wild card. Now you just give away Waller. Jimmy G isn't good enough to where Adams and Renfro are going to cut it. That's just my opinion. He's just not good enough for that.
Yeah, I don't see Adams staying a full season there.
Yeah.
I think he'll get traded.
Or at least he plays it out this season because his contract is super hefty and teams will be hesitant to trade that, especially when he could be a 1 or 2 year rental. I think Vegas should have made more of a push for Lamar Jackson if you're going to dish out that kind of money to Jimmy G and then give away Waller. Giving away Waller would have opened up a little bit of room for you. Jimmy G just isn't good enough with what you have. And Lamar at least would have put you in a better position.
Yeah, speaking about Lamar, it seems like no team has made an effort to even try to sign him.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I mean, we could talk about the Jets in more detail in a bit, but it seems like they're sold on Rodgers. The Allen Lazard is just signing is just the icing on the cake for this.
It's weird that he hasn't signed yet, although all signs are pointing to the direction that Rodgers will sign within the next 2 days, if not tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time. Again, it is still weird to me, though, that it hasn't 100% happened and that there hasn't been a lot of talk. I mean, obviously, there's been so much that's happened in the first couple of days. And the team's third win, too, by the way, Jared Stidham, was Denver on a 2-year, $10 million contract.
Yeah.
So he is definitely going to be the backup to Russell Wilson. Denver has actually outspent more than any other team to start free agency by it's pretty much them and the Bears by a pretty wide margin of who's spending the most money. Which does make sense because Denver did have a lot of cap space. The Bears had the most cap space.
Yeah.
So it's good to see the Bears making a lot of signings as well. I think TJ Edwards is going to be a really underrated signing for them.
Yeah.
The fact they got DJ Moore is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot of teams making moves. The Raiders still, to me, they like you said, they should have re-signed Waller if you're going to sign the quarterback.
Yeah.
Now you're just down one of your best weapons.
Yeah.
They haven't really spent on guys that I feel like they could have gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's going to come back to hurt them, especially because the Chiefs, I noticed too, have spent something like $80 million on players, which is just shocking to me that they've been able to do that. But it just shows that they're going to have the longevity to win, and teams like the Raiders and Rockets are going to need to catch up.
Yeah, and my second biggest acquisition so far in this is Javon Hargrave going to the 49ers for 4 years, $80 million. Obviously for the Eagles, it's a big loss. Like, they're deep, like, on the defensive line, so I don't think it's going to hurt them too bad. The 49ers got a really good guy to pair on the same line with Nick Bosa. That's going to be a scary front to face if any other team.
Right.
They are losing a lot of pieces, though, on the defense. Like, it can't go unnoticed that they lost Jimmy Ward.
Yeah.
They also lost Mike McGlinchey on the offensive side. They lost
Jimmy Ward going to the Texans. That's huge for the Texans.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Especially because of the fact that the Texans are in the middle of a rebuild, but they get a piece like that.
Yeah.
Especially if they can get Stroud, depending on who the Panthers go. I mean, I've said this before. I love Stroud. I think that, to me, he's going to be the better NFL quarterback, especially because something that's now being talked about, and I don't understand why it wasn't before. Obviously, the combine, it shows your height, athleticism, and all that. And people are starting to realize that Bryce Young is not a very big quarterback. And I don't understand why this hasn't been talked about till now. And sort of gone under the radar until the combine. I just don't get that.
I'm sure it's because, like, he was playing well in college and he was at Alabama. So people, there's going to be a loud majority of people that are pushing Bryce Young agenda. But yeah, I do agree. Not only would I personally choose CJ Stroud at the moment, I think that Frank Reich, the new coach in Carolina, is pushing for CJ Stroud to go number 1. I think that's why they moved up from 9. CJ Stroud fits the mold of what Frank Reich likes in a quarterback. He loved Carson Wentz because he was a 6'5" body, he had a strong arm, and he could see the field really well, at least at the time. He brought in Nick Foles because of the same thing. He's big, knows the system, great arm, and just incredible football IQ. And I see those things with Stroud too. I think he was measured 6'6". I could be wrong. Again, really long arms. We've seen the arm strength. And he's coming from an Ohio State team that is incredibly well coached. So his IQ is going to be through the roof. Although I like Young as a prospect too, Stroud to me is the safer pick. For a team like Carolina, you need that one key piece that is going to cornerstone your franchise. And I think hiring Frank Reich was a good move for them. And then trading up from 9 to 1 was a good move. And we'll see if they take Stroud, but if they do take Stroud, I think that'll be a good move.
Yeah. And back to what I was saying about the Niners, they also did lose Emmanuel Mosley. He went to the Lions on a 1-year, $6 million deal.
Yeah.
They also lost Amir Al-Shazir. He went to the Titans. They lost Sam Ebukam.
Yeah.
To the Colts. That's a huge... I was surprised he got paid that much.
Yeah.
That's a 3-year, $27 million contract with the Colts.
Edge rushers are just such a prime position. Like, people are going to overpay, I feel like.
That's what it's seeming. It seems like the positions that are going to get the most amount of money are definitely quarterbacks. Yeah. That's something that we've known for a while.
Yeah.
Edge rushers, which sort of started a little bit last year with Hassan Reddick getting that huge contract for the Eagles. Yeah. And a couple other edge rushers as well. And it just keeps going even farther. Yeah. And I feel like cornerbacks are also going to start getting a lot more money.
Yeah.
Seeing what's happened so far.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's teams asking for Slay.
Yeah.
The fact that C.J. Gardner-Johnson is apparently going to get paid heavily, which will be interesting to see how that all shakes up. I'm surprised that no team has been able to get him yet.
Right.
That makes me think that he's still in talks with the Eagles, which would be huge considering that the Eagles have lost so much.
Yeah.
Hargrave, Edwards,
Kaiser
White. They're definitely not getting Miles Sanders back with the fact that they signed
Rashad Penny.
Right. that tells me that they're not looking at Sanders anymore.
Yeah, agreed.
Did you see Sanders tweeted a goodbye tweet?
Yeah, yeah. I'm still believing that the Eagles will get Gardner Johnson back, just because I feel like when you have a player like him on your team and you traded up for him, I forget what they gave the Saints. I believe a third for CJ. It's a little much to give up just for a 1-year rental. Like, why wouldn't you just pay the money for him? I think they're just telling him, like, hold out a little bit, because we all know Howie Roseman is a complete magician with the cap. So I think that Howie Roseman's going to make a couple cap casualty moves so that he can free up more space to get CJ back, because in my opinion, the Eagles getting Bradbury back today was a huge move, which you were talking about cornerbacks getting paid. Bradbury is another one of them that got a significant amount of money today. They need to get Bradbury and CJ back, and they need to focus on the draft, because we all know sustained success is built on the draft in the NFL. And if you aren't drafting to replace some of these guys that you're losing, like we talked about Edwards and Hargrave and Kaiser White, then you're losing out. The Eagles already took Davis as somewhat of a replacement for Hargrave. They took Dean last year because they knew at least one of Edwards and White were going.
Yeah.
Now we know it's both. You're probably going to have to look into the draft for another linebacker, because the market right now just isn't too strong. Like, David Long Jr. got signed to a complete steal from Miami. He got paid 2 years, $11 million, which is just puzzling for the Eagles to not pay that when you knew Edwards was gone within the first 5 minutes of free agency. Like, why were you not hopping on that? But it is what it is. And I do trust their plan at the end of the day. So
yeah, I think that it's interesting to see where some of these teams have gone that didn't have a lot of casualties. The Eagles have taken a lot of casualties. The 49ers have as well. To me, the team to look out for now is the Bears.
Yeah.
They went from being the worst team in the NFC to now getting the first overall draft pick, which they traded, to now getting serious weapons, a ton of draft capital.
Yep.
And you still have your quarterback under his rookie contract.
Yeah.
They're going to be scary for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And NFC teams, which we talked about last year, was a very weak conference. That's a team you're going to have to look out for, because I'm feeling like it's going to be almost like what the Eagles were this year, where everything came together at the right time to go on that run, even if it only lasts for a year or two.
And to your point again, like, the Eagles won a lot last year, a large in part because Jalen Hurts was on a rookie contract. And we see that a lot of teams benefit from that heavily. Another thing that leans to me towards the Bears, maybe I'm not going to say they're going like 12 wins or anything, but they're definitely going to have a really good season. I feel like another thing that points to that is there are no real formidable opponents in their division. Like, I think Detroit's pretty good, but Minnesota didn't show like they were some powerhouse that's going to own that division for the next couple of years. Like, I feel like they're beatable for Chicago, and we haven't really seen Minnesota make any eye-opening moves that could really turn the corner for them. So I could see Minnesota taking a step back and teams like Detroit and Chicago taking steps up. Maybe not over them, but to that level.
Yeah, I think the Lions are definitely going to be TV.
Yeah.
And they've made a couple pretty good signings as well.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting some of the ones they did, but I saw that they spent money, which is great for them. Quickly, before we go to the Jets, I do want to touch on Jalen Hurts quickly. There was a rumor on the local radio, and I don't know, obviously, I'll do this, I haven't heard it really from anyone else, but there is reports coming out that Hurts could take a lower contract now in the hopes that the price for quarterbacks goes up to $75 million a year in the next 3 to 4 years.
See, like, that's probably a really smart move for him. Maybe taking a little bit shorter extension, because we've seen, obviously, Mahomes signed, 10 years, but we weren't going to do that with Hurts. But I thought 6 and 7 probably was in the range in terms of years. I could definitely, that would be a smart move for him to go 2 or 3 years with the extension. Right. Yeah. We all know what kind of player Jalen Hurts is, too, in terms of his attitude towards the team. And I think that him doing that is sort of playing to both hands. Like, he wants his money, obviously, and he should want all the money he can get. And at the same time, him getting all the money he can get is also going to handcuff the Eagles a little bit. So I feel like he's going to say, I'll take a little bit less now. We can build something. We can draft really well. And then what you were saying, when the quarterback market is at an all-time high, which we know it will be, we will have players that are on rookie contracts, and you can pay me that sort of affordably. And we all, like, the cap is going to go up. Yeah. Like, money is going to change in that time span. That doesn't surprise me at all, honestly, if that happened, just because of the personality of Hurts and the wits that he has. Like, he's a really smart person, not just player. Like, he's a very, very intelligent person. It beams out of him. And his agent, Nicole Lynn, same thing. Like, she's one of the best agents in the NFL right now. Pretty much the Rich Paul of the NFL. That wouldn't surprise me at all that they would make just an incredibly intelligent move like that.
Yeah, I think if it, like, Hurts is the guy that if it came down to him getting a large payday or, like, the Eagles building a roster that could help him win, he's going to pick the roster over his payday.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think he's going to get the best of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she should.
It will also be interesting to see what happens with the cap in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
If the NFL keeps making the money it is now, if not more,
mm-hmm.
If the cap goes up, that means quarterback salaries will go up. And that's going to be the first thing to go up.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting for that. The Jets I want to go to just because of all these rumors. We talked last week that it's either going to be Rodgers or Garoppolo. Well, now it's pretty clear that it's definitely going to be Rodgers. I think the Jets are set up to make a little bit of a run here.
Yeah, agreed. Friggin' agreed. And listen, I was saying this back when the season was going on. I was like, the Jets are going to be that team that is going to be in on Rodgers. And I predicted it back then that the Jets would get Rodgers. And it's all played out into fruition for them perfectly because we knew that that team was a quarterback away. We all knew it. They have so much talent, and they have so much talent on rookie deals right now. Paying Rodgers isn't hurting them at all. They're still going to be able to go out and make some different moves. You got your quarterback. We all know what Rodgers is. I love this move for the Jets, and if the Dolphins weren't getting so good, too, I would pick the Jets to win the AFC East. But right now, my pick is the Dolphins. That defense is incredibly scary right now.
I really want to touch on the Dolphins in a second, but I want to get your input on Rodgers' wish list because I know you guys don't like his ego at all. So I just want to see what you guys think of that.
I'm just saying it's not smart to start caving into a player at any sports professional level. It's not smart to just cave into a player's every wish and need that he wants. And we all know what Rodgers is. Like, we know he wants this. But it's so backwards to me that everyone Rodgers didn't openly say it, but we all know that he felt it. The reason there was so much disconnect with him and the Packers was they weren't putting weapons around him. And now he comes to this new team and he says, get me a bunch of the weapons that I had in Green Bay. Like, that just is so backwards to me in itself. And it's just so, the Jets should not do that, where they just feed into Rodgers. They overpaid Allen Lazard.
They did.
4 years, 44
really
is not a good move. And they're doing that so that Rodgers will come. That's not smart. That is not smart football right there. That's not how you build a winning team. I don't like that at all.
I am backing him wanting OBJ. I think that would be good for the team.
I'm fine with that.
I feel like if you're getting Mercedes Lewis and Randall Cobb, you're just going to have them as like veteran.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, teachers. And I don't.
And I mean, if like to that point, if Lazard was on a 2-year, $15 million deal,
which is what he's worth.
Yeah, if he's on that, I'm cool with that. It's enticing Rodgers to come, and he's a veteran player that can teach some of these younger receivers, some things. He's played with Rodgers, so he has some knowledge to bring to the table. But to sign him to a longer deal, 4 years, going north of $40 million is just not smart, in my opinion.
It also feels like a diss on Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, agreed.
Who won Rookie of the Year and was clearly the best weapon they had when Breece Hall went down.
Yeah.
And now Rodgers is basically saying, he's fine, but I want 4 other guys, 2 of which are well past their prime in Cobb and Lewis.
Yeah.
Odell, we haven't seen play since he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, so we have no idea what he's going to be like.
Right.
And then Lazard is just sort of that security blanket that filled in when Devontae Adams got traded.
Yeah.
That's all he was.
Agreed. Yeah.
So Rodgers going into a place where he has so much better weapons than he had in Green Bay. Arguably, these are the best weapons Rodgers will have since he won the Super Bowl in 2010.
Yeah.
And instead he's saying, let's bring in these weapons that won me nothing my last 5 or so years in Green Bay.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
And to me, the Jets will cave because of the Jets, and they're so desperate to just have a guy that could potentially win them a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But to me, and I like them getting Rodgers. I think that they were just a quarterback away. But this was always my concern about signing Aaron Rodgers, especially to a team that's this desperate.
Mm-hmm.
How is he going to treat the culture?
Yeah.
And if you're a selfish, egotistical dude who's now going to a team that will give you pretty much anything as long as you get them where they think they want to go, that's way too much freedom for a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. And I can see this working out one of two ways. The Jets win the Super Bowl in the next 2 years, or it completely bombs and Aaron Rodgers retires from the NFL while having one of his worst seasons ever. Yeah,
and something that boosts the latter of what you said, New York media they are relentless. And if things start going the wrong way, they're going to be quick to hop on this wish list. They're going to be quick to hop on that. Because, as they should, because this is not something you want from your quarterback. We talk about all the time. Jalen Hurts is the perfect professional athlete. He is the perfect NFL quarterback. The way he plays, well, that could be in question just because of he gets hurt a lot, and his mentality and his personality. It's perfect because he's team first. He's one of the guys. He doesn't put himself above anyone. And this is what Rodgers does. He puts himself above the team, and he's putting himself above the front office. It's mind-boggling in itself, but you just can't cave into that.
You can't, but also, to be fair to the Jets, can you really say our front office?
Right, agreed. Completely agree.
Because they've messed it up so many times.
I mean, have they ever had a QB that is even close to really an MVP level? They got Brett Favre.
Besides Namath?
I was going back to that, and even then, Namath was in.
So Namath was in. They also had Vinny Testaverde for a while, who was decent. He played 20-some years, and was a proven somewhat winner. Mm-hmm. Besides that, those two and Mark Sanchez for the 2 years even on that unbelievable run. No, that's pretty much all the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Also, that one weird year where Ryan Fitzpatrick just decided to completely ball off.
Yeah.
And they finished 10-6 and missed the playoffs by a game.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is basically the history of Jets quarterbacks in a nutshell. That's all you need to know.
So I'm not surprised that they're doing this, but I don't like necessarily the culture that is being built.
Hold on. Everyone praises LeBron when he does the exact same shit, though.
Well, he's different. He's LeBron James, the best player probably to ever play the game of basketball.
Okay, Aaron Rodgers is arguably one of the best quarterbacks ever.
I mean, he hasn't been to 10 straight NBA finals, and he hasn't won 4 rings.
I mean, he won 3. He won back-to-back MVPs in his late 30s.
He's not. I don't think he's on LeBron James level.
No, I'm not.
I don't think. I'm also going to say this too. I think it's a little different to compare in their leagues. I think that you can do that in the NBA. Have a LeBron James that pretty much is the coach, GM, best player, owner, everything. But in the NFL, in a locker room with 53 guys, with 20-some coaches, with all these front office members, I don't think doing that is a recipe for success in the NFL. And let me get this straight too. I don't praise LeBron for that either. But
I think the biggest difference is that when LeBron's done, he's won championships.
Yeah.
When he was able to get Tyronn Lue to coach the Cavs and they won that year, it clearly worked out for them.
Yeah.
When he felt like Tyronn Lue was not working, he basically kind of deserted him.
Yeah.
For the Lakers, he was able to get Anthony Davis, but that also worked because they both had the same agent in Rich Paul.
Yeah.
So LeBron's able to do it in ways that you're not just demanding for top wide receiver, for the guys that you want. LeBron's doing it in ways saying hey, I think that this guy will help us win the championship for this piece away. And I think this will work with me.
I mean, but he's missed many times.
Oh, yeah, for
Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's missed many times. And I'm saying this would be the first time Rodgers really did this because he's been so deprived of weapons outside of Devontae Adams since they won the Super Bowl 13 years ago.
That's sort of my point, though. When it comes to LeBron, he's at least making arguments. Whether or not they work out, I understand why he wanted Russ because they felt the Lakers needed another point guard. He wanted Anthony Davis. He wanted a center that would pair with him. can you really say that these weapons that Aaron Rodgers is asking for make sense?
Yeah.
Every single one?
Odell makes sense to me 100%.
That one does, yeah, but can you say that having Randall Cobb and Mercedes Lewis makes the Jets that much better of a team?
Well, who do they have at tight end?
They could
They
draft
have
someone,
CJ Uzama.
and they could draft someone too.
Yeah.
Okay, Mercedes Lewis wouldn't be the worst backup tight
It's
end.
not-
I'm just saying, he
Not
wouldn't
that-
be the
no,
worst.
Not as a backup, but it seems like Rodgers is asking him to then start. I don't feel like this is a request to come in and just be a backup.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if he brings... I know this wouldn't happen. Could you imagine if he brings David Bakhtiari and the trade with him? Like, that would just be like...
Hey, that one I would be like, okay, that makes sense because Bakhtiari is a beast. But
Yeah, but that would be so chalked because, like, Rodgers would actually be getting every single thing he wanted.
Yeah. And actually, something that people forget too is the Jets have Mekhi Becton coming back from injury this year, who was a star. Well, not a star, but he was very promising his rookie year. And then he had the ACL, MCL tear before the season. So getting Bakhtiari with Becton would be pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
That would be pretty dangerous. But
I don't know how they would figure that out, though.
yeah, that's kind of the thing is you gotta figure out money, and then you have to in turn give something for Rodgers and Bakhtiari. They're probably going to be asking for one of the Rookie of the Years.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I don't think the Packers trading Rodgers puts them into the bottom feeders necessarily.
I think Jordan Love will be good, but it's not going to be like when Favre left Rodgers.
Yeah,
like,
no,
the guy.
100%,
It's not
100%.
I think the other thing too is like we talked about with the Bears and Lions and even the Vikings the way they played this year. This is a very competitive NFC North, and not one where if you just have a young quarterback come in, that means you're automatically going to win or even have a shot at winning the way you would have 3 years ago when all those teams were basically bottom feeders.
Yeah.
Because the Vikings have improved a lot. Yeah, they'll probably not do as well this year as they did last year. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It felt like this year was kind of a fluke with the way that they won every game by one possession, and every game they lost, they got blown out.
Yeah.
But the Bears and Lions, like I said, are the two up-and-coming teams in the NFC. The fact that you would then have to compete against them would be very tough for a young quarterback. And I feel like the Packers are going to finish, if not last, they're going to finish third by a very close margin.
Yeah.
Whichever team finishes in last.
Right.
Which I would say is okay because at least now you're getting the direction off of Rodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like the Packers needed to do last year, and they didn't. And they ended up finishing 8-9 in a really disappointing season.
Right, yeah.
So now you're finally admitting that, okay, we need to get past Rodgers.
Yeah.
And start getting ready for the future, which will be a very tough competitive future.
And we've seen NFL teams quickly turn around from pretty much the bottom. I mean, us specifically, 4-11-1 in 2020 were the Eagles. 6th overall pick. 2 years later, they had the best record in the league, tied for the best, lost in the Super Bowl. So they can turn it around quick.
Look at the Rams.
Yeah.
The Rams the same year that the Eagles had the second overall pick. The Rams had the first pick, were absolutely horrible. Hire a new head coach, sort of figure everything out. 2 years after that, they're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And again, they lost that too, but they were to build off that roster to then make trades to get veterans in free agency to win that Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say, well, it didn't really work out for them, but they were able to use those young guys as assets to win. And the Packers could arguably do the same thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if some of these guys that are around during this rebuild don't last that long, especially Jordan Love, depending on how he plays.
Agreed.
Or you could trade him the way that the Lions traded Goff, and the Rams got Stafford, and that's how they won. I could see that happening as well, depending on how Love shakes out. So the Packers have a lot of options right now, and they should feel, although not great about the immediate future, the long term, this will be the best thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so I want to move into the Dolphins really quick before we get into the defense and who they got. I want to talk about them picking up Tua's fifth-year option.
Yeah.
I think morally this was the right thing to do because they put him in a situation where his health is now going to be in question for the rest of his career.
Right.
But I feel like you should have moved on from him and especially looked at Lamar because he got no attention. You got great receivers to pair him with, but that's just me. I think they made a mistake. I think it's going to come back and bite them because that's going to be a really competitive division when Rodgers cuts in there. Thoughts on that?
I see what you're saying, definitely, because I think Lamar's pretty blatantly an upgrade from Tua to the point of QBs on rookie contracts, I think for this year it makes sense to at least ride out Tua a little bit with his rookie deal. See what you can do at least. Because I mean they were 8-3 with Tua. They were undefeated at a point when he was playing, and
that was healthy too.
Yeah, healthy, yeah, for sure. I mean, to be fair to Tua, his injuries were sort of like freak accidents. You know, just being slammed on the turf way too hard and stuff. I think that, number one, I think Tua can stay healthy for a full season. I think he can do it. And B, with what you brought in, with what you are currently paying, I think paying your QB on a rookie deal makes a little bit more sense. And you never know, like, what can shake up with the QB situation next year when we're in this position. Tua doesn't play up to his ability, or at least the ability you want. You might be able to be in a better situation for next year to pay a QB. I'm just kind of intrigued with the Lamar thing, too, because the two teams that I really thought were going to be heavily in on Lamar were Vegas, which we talked about, and then Miami. I thought Miami was going to be all in on Lamar, and you haven't heard any buzz around it. Actually, there was the one report that said they listed like 5 teams, and Raiders and Dolphins were 2 of them that didn't even want Lamar. I think normally, or initially, I would have said bad move to not go after Lamar, but after thinking it over a little bit and seeing that they picked up the option and not extended Tua, I like this move for the Dolphins. I do think Tua has something to bring to the table, especially on a team that talented. Like, this is sort of looking like the AFC 49ers, where just a loaded team, and then the quarterback is questionable.
Yeah, I mean, Tua can stay out. The issue is if he gets another concussion, I think he's done.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you've got to be really worried about that, especially if you're not even just thinking this year, but long term. And I think that's the reason they picked up that 5th year. If he can make it through the season without getting a concussion and contemplating retirement, then maybe you go long term. But my thought is, if you're the Dolphins front office, you have to be wondering if Tua is thinking about retirement if he were to get a serious head injury like that again. Yeah. And you can't bet on him not retiring if you're going to give him a long-term contract. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest reason for this 5th term. The other thing, too, when it comes to Lamar, I'm feeling much more confident about my Buccaneers pick for him than I was last week.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Because now the market's opened up more. It doesn't seem like Tom Brady is coming back at all. No. So if you're the Buccaneers and you want to win a wide open division, why would you not go with Lamar at this point?
Yeah, right.
Especially because no other team seems interested. So you're going to be able to get him on a way less pricey contract than you would have even a couple days ago in free agency. Because now you can say, Lamar, hey, guess what? No team's really interested. It doesn't seem like the Ravens are going to give you anywhere near the money that we want.
Yeah, right.
So why would you not come here with a team that made it to the Super Bowl only a couple years ago, that made it to the NFC division round last year, and even though they lost the wild card this year, we're still competitive enough in a wide open division, and I don't think that division's gotten much better, even with the Saints getting Derek Carr, because they still don't have a ton of weapons outside the ones that they've had already, who we don't even know if Michael Thomas is going to be healthy at this point in his career, with the fact that he's torn an ACL.
Yeah, he just got a restructured deal too, 1 year, $10 million.
So even the Saints don't seem like they're that interested in keeping him that well as of right now, at least until we can see if he's healthy or not and can stay healthy. And Kamara is Kamara. He's a great weapon, but you need other things around him. Yeah. Uh-huh. So I think that the Buccaneers should look heavily into Lamar, and I feel like this would be the best fit, especially with everything that just happened in the last couple of days.
Agreed. And that was a good point with the wide open division. Like, Carr doesn't move the needle that much. Lamar on the Bucs would move it more than Carr to the Saints.
Yeah. And Ian Rappaport, he reported 2 days ago that the Buccaneers were looking at Baker Mayfield. And honestly, if you're going to look at Baker Mayfield, just get Lamar.
Yeah.
Just get Lamar.
That's what I'm saying, like, with the Raiders, too. If you're going to go for Jimmy G, just go pay Lamar.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand what teams are doing right now, where they're like, because we know at this point in the NFL where we're at in this history of the league, you need a star quarterback to win. Or one that is heavily above average to win. Jimmy G is definitely not above average. He's the most average quarterback I've ever seen.
He did go to the Super Bowl, though. He almost won. He almost won, too, to be fair.
He almost won throwing 6 passes in the NFC Championship game. And then when he needed to win the 49ers game, he couldn't do it. Even though he was given an 11-point cushion. So, no, he is a very average quarterback.
Yeah.
Derek Carr is above average, but not enough that I would say automatically gets you to a Super Bowl, and especially not on the Saints, who don't really have that good of a roster.
Agreed.
If you are going for an elite quarterback, yes, Lamar has a lot of health issues, but it's not concussions, which is a big one. And it's ones that he's only out for a couple of games. You just need him to, if he's going to get hurt, it needs to be early enough this season that you can get him back to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that needs to be figured out for him. And I feel like if you put him on a team that he doesn't have to run as much and it's set up for a better passing attack, it will be able to keep him healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like what happened with Randall Cunningham, where the moment he went to the Vikings, it opened up his passing game, and he learned how to run less because he was set on a team that didn't just use his rushing ability all the time, that said, hey, we want to develop you into passing because we know you have the arm strength.
Yeah.
We know you have the passing ability, and we want to keep you healthy enough for us to go deep into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why that Vikings team went so deep. And they had comparable weapons to what the Buccaneers have now.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So to me, it would make sense to get Lamar and then figure out what you want to do with the offense to teach him to just throw out of the pocket.
Agreed.
And be less comfortable just running every single time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is it just me, or like in recent years, like it just feels like there's only like 20 teams out of the 32 have like a real like starter for quarterback, and like the rest of them are like borderline backups.
I might even bring that number down a little bit to like 15, where I don't know, maybe even lower, 10. Like maybe 10 QBs have
quarterback.
enough.
It's like super top heavy, and then like
it fizzles that's what I'm thinking.
Like really bad.
And
really
I mean,
fast.
like think about where Dak Prescott, like he's borderline top 10, if not in the top 10. Are we sure he can win a Super Bowl? Like I don't know.
Well, he has games like when he went up against the Buccaneers where he looked like Patrick Mahomes.
It's just flashes.
Yeah.
Though, so I don't know, like it's all about consistency and making the right plays and that sort of thing. I don't know if he does that enough. He's clearly an above average quarterback. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's why QBs get paid so much, is because they don't come around very often. And when they do, they can leave in the snap of a finger.
Yeah,
especially in today's age.
The other thing that's been really interesting with quarterbacks is the amount of veterans that have sort of showed up out of nowhere to become starters, like Geno.
Like Geno,
is the one that first comes to mind. But then you look at some of these other teams. Jared Goff had a total revival now. With Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen. I mean, the best example probably in modern NFL history is Kurt Warner, who went from being one of the best quarterbacks of his era in the early 2000s to being a backup to then going to Arizona and becoming a certified star again in the NFL.
Yeah.
So it can happen. You just sort of need to wait for some of these guys to get that veteran experience to then be given that opportunity, which I feel like a lot of teams are just going with the younger quarterbacks, hoping that works out.
True.
And I feel like if you go with a veteran at this point, it can. Obviously, there's teams that have done that in a terrible way. The Colts being the best example, where they're just signing all of these quarterbacks that are way, way past their prime. I mean, when your last three quarterbacks have been Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan, don't tell me that you're trying to win and that you're only a quarterback away, because you might only be a quarterback away, and then you're getting a quarterback that puts you down to a level of not being able to compete.
Yeah.
Right. You see they released Matt Ryan too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know the direction that they can go in. Somehow the Colts went from an organization that was a quarterback away like the Jets are to now being the dumpster fire in the worst division in football.
Right.
Do you guys have anything else for the NFL?
Nah, we can move on.
All right, floor is yours.
All right, I'm ready for some college hoops. Finally today got a chance to look at the bracket, because I sort of saw when it came out on Sunday and then got a good chance to evaluate it, and then I looked at it, and first of all, there's some head scratchers, the way that the bracket is set up, and then there's some other ones where I just feel like this is going to be upset city this year. The first game that I circled, because it just makes absolutely no sense to me, is in the West region. It is the 5-seed St. Mary's versus the 12-seed VCU. I have problems with this one, because of the fact that VCU won the Atlantic 10, which, by the way, the Atlantic 10 got totally screwed over this year. They only have one team in both the March Madness tournament and NIT, which to me is ridiculous.
Yeah, they should have
three teams that, even if they weren't seated that high, should have been in the first four, in my opinion. And they were totally left out. But that's besides the point. VCU wins the Atlantic 10 and gets put at the 12th seed. Meanwhile, St. Mary's finishes second in the same, I believe it's the West Coast Conference?
Yeah, West Coast.
Gonzaga
Yeah.
finishes second in that, even though the only other team that's like somewhat competitive is Marymount, which finished a far third behind both of them.
Yeah.
And St. Mary's is fifth?
Yeah.
And VCU's, who again won their conference, is like, this is going to be, I have VCU going to the Sweet 16 after this.
Okay.
But VCU's winning this game. I don't usually am that confident about games like this. They're winning this game.
Yeah, and the 12th seed is one of those, the 12-5 is one of those matchups where it seems a lot closer, and the 12th seed has way more of a shot. I picked VCU to win that one too, just because I watched St. Mary's and I want to like them because I want them to overtake Gonzaga. But they're not going to. It's time to give up on that.
And the other thing about them is the fact that they also lost to Marymount. It's not like that this is a team that has been that consistent all season, or even through most of the end of the regular season.
Yeah.
Where VCU went on a strong run against, again, very competitive teams in the A-10 to win. The reason that I have them going to Sweet 16, and again, this is one where I feel like this could be a possible upset. I have Iona beating UConn.
I do not, but go ahead. I want to hear this.
They're just a very competitive team. The fact that you have Rick Pitino, who had an upset his first year coaching them, and they're back in the tournament. And UConn, to me, again, it's another team that played very well a lot of the season, but they had a few slip-ups. Yeah. Especially in the Big East tournament. Yeah. That's one where they faltered very quickly. And I just like the fact that Iona was able to run through the Metro Atlantic the way that they did, even though sort of the ending was a bit weird. I mentioned last week that St. Peter's won their game. They ended up losing to 11th ranked Marist, who then played Iona. So Iona had a pretty easy run to the NAAC championship. But they have a good record. They have played pretty well in non-conference games. So I feel like that this is one that could be an upset. Obviously, UConn could easily win as well. Yeah. And that's sort of the whole issue with this tournament. There's a lot of toss-up games if you're going to look at the underdog. Yeah. After that, okay, so first of all, I just filled out one bracket so far, and I probably will fill out a few other. Yeah. Who do you have winning your championship? Because I don't need to.
So mine probably is not picked very much, and people might be picking them before the Sweet 16 to get bounced. I love the way this team is coached. I love the energy they play with. They shoot the three pretty well, which guard play and three balls are important when it comes to March. I have Marquette winning the championship.
Oh, that is...
It's a stretch, but
this
is
risky.
The field is so tight this year that I was looking at all the top seeds and I'm like, none of the one seeds impress me. I don't think I have a one seed in the Final Four.
I have one, and it's Alabama.
Yeah, I have one, and it's Alabama.
Because they've been the most consistent one seed. I mean, Houston, I don't trust. I agree with you. I just don't trust them. Kansas, I like making a deep run. The issue is the fact they won last year, and those teams that win the year before don't make it to the Final Four. Yeah. And then Purdue is... I never know how to feel about them. Yeah, I want to always pick them to make the Final Four, and then they always get bounced, which might come back to hurt me because this is a bit of history from my end, but about 4 years ago now, I was writing a sports blog for myself, and that was the year after Virginia had lost to UMBC, and I picked Virginia as the most overrated team of the entire tour. Of course, they went on to win. Yeah. So I don't want to say that Purdue is the most overrated team in case they go on the win and spice me in the ass again. But they always are ranked very high. They always do very well in the Big Ten. And then once they play the rest of the field, they don't win. Yeah. And the fact they have to play teams like Duke and Florida Atlantic, which Florida Atlantic, the fact that they're the 9th seed to me is a bit out there considering they were 31 and 30.
They had a really good record. And I just want to know what the thought process was to not put them 7, but even 8.
I was thinking 7 would make more sense for them, considering that 7 is a really not good Michigan State team.
Yeah. I would have put Michigan State 9. And, you could have flipped that.
Yeah, because Memphis, I still have it 8. Yeah. Even playing Florida Atlantic, just playing a better conference, even though the American Athletic is outside of Houston is sort of like But I do understand putting Memphis at 8. I don't like Florida Atlantic at 9. I would have had them at 7 or even 6 with the way that Kentucky's played at certain point.
Agreed.
I have Duke making the Final Four out of this one.
Wow, we are. So you have UConn being upset first round. I have them in the Final Four. You have Duke in the Final Four. Yeah. I have Duke upset in the first round.
I like Oral Roberts.
Yeah, it's nothing against Duke. Like, no. And I think I've said I'm a UNC fan and stuff. Like, it is completely aside from my hatred of Duke. I love this Oral Roberts team. I think they're way better than when they were 15 and upset to Ohio State. I love Max Asmus. They're my pick. I have them winning that. And I actually have them winning their second round game, too.
Yeah, I could easily see that happening, especially because they'd be playing... I'm assuming Tennessee's going to win. I like what Louisiana's done.
Yeah.
They're not really known as a basketball school. And the fact that they won the Sun Belt, to me, is a bit surprising.
Yeah.
I know that the Sun Belt's always been more of a football school, and it will be interesting once James Madison can actually compete for a playoff spot. What will happen? But to me, it's just sort of like a football conference that someone has to make it, and I see Tennessee as much better. I could see Duke losing that pretty easily.
That's the thing. It's like some of these teams, it's like they could go to the Final Four, but they could also literally lose in the first round.
All right, so I've got 2 other ones for you that could be possible upset teams that played very well at certain stretches and then sort of either faltered out or did very well in their conference championship, and both are Big Ten schools. So they're both 10 seeds, surprisingly. In the Midwest, Penn State is 10th going against Texas A&M. And then Northwestern is 7th, They're 7th playing 10 Boise State. How do you feel about both of these schools?
So I've loved Penn State since the beginning because Pickett has really gone off this year. And the thing that will hurt them is rebounding. But I loved how they've been playing the last 2 or 3 weeks. They're coming into the tournament really hot. They beat some really good teams in the Big Ten tournament. Like Illinois, I still feel like is a good team. They beat them. As you said, Northwestern is a good team too. They beat them. And then Indiana, which they've been top 15 nearly the whole season. They have a really good team. And Penn State sort of shut them down up until literally the last minute 30 when Indiana went on a crazy run and almost came back and won that game.
Yeah.
So I like the Penn State. I have them in the Sweet 16, large in part because of my big major upset. Colgate over Texas.
Really?
Yep. I'm doing it because, listen, I loved the Colgate team last year, and they brought back a lot of players this year. They shoot the 3 really well. They have an incredible offensive scheme. Like, that coaching is really good, and they know how to play in that system. I love that. They play really hard. And Texas is one of those teams that just has not impressed me. And I can see a cold night from Texas and just Colgate runs away with it.
Okay, so your Midwest, I'm assuming, looks a lot like mine, where there's going to be upsets and a lower seed will make it through, especially if you have Colgate winning, which I have Texas going all the way to my Elite 8. Who do you have in your Final Four team coming out of the Midwest?
From the Midwest, Miami.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because they've just been the most consistent team all the way
And I love
through.
the guard play. Love the guard play.
Yeah, and to me, it's just the fact that it is so... I have Texas going far, but there's issues that I have with this team. Houston, I don't know how to feel about because, again, they do play in a weaker conference, and they've had that loss to Temple to me.
Yeah, I know.
Core, and then they had another really bad.
Oh, who was it?
Too.
They lost in their tournament to. It was a bad loss. It was a bad loss. But to your point, I have not been able to shake off the Temple loss all year.
Yeah,
and just how terrible they looked, and everything they did wrong in that game: shot poorly, turned the ball over, couldn't play defense. Those are the 3 things that lose you these games in March, and it proved in their conference tournament. And I do have them, because they're first round, they're the 1, so it's not like you're scared in the first round.
Gonzaga was always picked as the one.
Yeah, sort of like that, yeah, agreed.
Never really went that far, because there was the one year where they actually did, a couple of years where they actually did make the final. But the first couple of years where they were picked as a 1 seed, they would only make it to the round of 32 and they get bounced really early by a team that they definitely should have beat.
Yeah.
And I think Houston's a little bit better than that, and especially looking at the two teams that they'll be playing against in Auburn and Iowa.
Yeah.
Who have both really struggled at certain points.
Agreed.
I have Auburn winning that one. I don't know if that's really...
Yeah, I picked Auburn too. Yeah.
And I don't really... Again, this is one where it's like I don't really understand how Iowa is a better seeded team even though they have one less loss.
Yeah, I know.
Which again, it is like an 8-9, but still, you would think that one would be seeded a little
And actually, the SEC has been a little... Big Ten and SEC have been pretty comparable, so yeah. But I think Auburn has had more impressive wins than Iowa.
Yeah, me
like
too.
They beat Tennessee on the road.
Yeah.
They beat Kentucky, but Kentucky hasn't been necessarily what it always is. But they played really close with Alabama those 2 times.
Yeah.
Like, I think Auburn impressed me just a little bit more than Iowa.
Yeah.
That's kind of.
I can see them beating Houston too if they win.
I could see it.
So Houston's loss was to Memphis.
Yeah,
and that's the only reason basically why Memphis is able to sneak in at all of the seeding that they got. They probably would have been a little bit lower, if not one of the teams that will be playing tonight as part of the first four.
Yeah.
And this okay. So we've got Miami. Who did you say you have coming out of the West again?
I have UConn coming out of the West.
UConn, okay. Yeah. So you have Miami, UConn, Bama, and who did you say you had? Marquette, right. Yeah. So I've got Bama, Duke, Miami, and UCLA.
Yeah, I'm not going to hate the UCLA. I have them losing Sweet 16 to TCU.
Yeah.
But I don't hate the UCLA. They have a lot of experience.
They have a lot of experience. They played very well in a very competitive Pac-12.
Yeah, Pac-12 was good this year.
Yeah, they were. And it just, to me, UCLA's felt like one of the more complete teams out of the entire tournament. I kind of have UCLA winning the whole thing.
Yeah, no,
and it could be a toss-up. I could see Kansas also getting back in.
Yeah.
I feel like that Elite Eight game, those are the 2 words, I definitely have them as the 1 and 2 making it to the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
I just don't see, maybe TCU is able to get past them, but again, TCU's been shaky.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. I like, the thing I like about TCU is they have, I can't remember his name, but their point guard is one of those guys, sort of like a Jimmer Fredette, where he could catch fire in a hurry in a tournament. So it's sort of banking on that. It's sort of, the field is just super tight this year. I just don't like any of the top seeds. And normally I'm one of those guys that kind of rides a 1 pretty far, or one of the 2s pretty far. And I'm like, then I get to my Elite Eight and I'm like, it's literally almost 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. And I'm like, I have to change it.
Yeah, well,
but this year is the year I'm like, I definitely like a lot of the lower seeds. Yeah.
Last year, my 2 that I had going for was Kentucky. That was one that
a lot of people
historically will look back on as probably one of my worst ones.
Yeah.
The only one that I remember that was a worst team. I have really bad luck with 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever filled out a tournament was when Kansas was 2 with Embiid, and they lost to Stanford in the second round.
Yeah.
So 2 seeds to me, they do kind of scare me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie about that. But I feel like when you're looking at the couple of these 2 seeds, to me, UNC Asheville, like, they always are really competitive, but not enough to, like, scare me the way that
agreed.
Some of these other teams would. I mean, Vermont, I know you have Marquette going far, but Vermont always plays very well and could be an upset. Okay, so we talked a lot about the teams you have. What major upsets besides some of the ones we mentioned?
Yeah, obviously I mentioned Colgate is definitely my biggest. I mentioned Oral Roberts. Let me go through real quick. I think maybe my bigger one is NC State as the 11. I have them going to the Sweet 16.
Okay.
Let's look. Like, I have Providence beating Kentucky first round.
Okay.
I just like the fire they play with. They play with a lot of energy. Yeah, that's what I like.
Again, the other issue for me with Providence, a lot of these teams that would have been popular picks 2 weeks ago really faltered at that time. And Providence was one of them that just has not looked good in the last couple of weeks, where Kentucky's actually caught a little bit of fire.
Yeah,
I have 2 big ones in the South. They're not. I don't have them going too far. I have Creighton going to the Sweet 16 to Arizona. I just feel like Arizona is a very solid team. I like the way Princeton's played, but maybe if it was another Ivy League school of not Princeton, because Princeton, I think, was the 3rd seed in their tournament and was able to get in. I have Charleston, which again doesn't make sense to me that they're a 12 seed, even though they only have 3 losses.
Yeah.
And again, 12-5s are very popular, and San Diego State to me is not that strong of a team.
No.
So I have Charleston winning that game, and I have University of California, Santa Barbara beating Baylor.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. That one will be interesting. I'll see when I'm filling out my money brackets if I keep that one or not. But I feel like that one could be one of the more popular ones.
Yeah.
I mentioned VCU.
Yeah.
I also have one more. You mentioned how well Indiana's played. I have Kent State winning that game.
I could see it again, yeah.
With the way that they've played in the MAC this year, they have a couple really good veteran players too.
Yeah, that's actually one where Kent State was talked about with Alabama Birmingham with just insane guard play, and I actually picked them. I didn't even realize that. Yeah. I picked Kent State over Indiana.
Yeah, which is why I feel like Miami, if all this stuff works out the way that we're picking, which of course no one knows.
I mean, it flat out won't.
Something won't. But I feel like if Miami does get to play Kent State, and even Indiana, which has struggled at a certain point, and then you get to play Houston, which in my opinion is the weakest 1 seed. To me, if they can play the way they have throughout the majority of the season, it's pretty much almost a cakewalk into the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
At which point, then you play either, to me, Texas or Xavier or maybe, that's basically it, I feel like. Yeah, and even then, you're not playing a team that you're like, oh, we're so overmatched or anything. No, I mean, Xavier's played all right. Yeah. But again, not enough for me to feel confidently picking them as a 3 seed to go far. Yeah. You mentioned the fact that you have Texas getting upset by Penn State, which I can absolutely see with the way Penn State's played. So at that point, Miami, I feel like it's really easy for them to get to be the 4 seed. Yeah. And similar for Bama, where I just feel like as of the 1 seed for them, they're just playing a couple easier teams or teams that have really struggled at certain points. Yeah. I could, though, see Virginia upsetting them.
I could see it, too, definitely. Because Virginia is one of those teams, when they're shooting the ball well, that defense is nearly unpenetrable. So I could definitely see that, too.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting tournament with a lot of upsets.
Yeah, I feel like even if we don't get as many upsets as we normally do, the games are just going to be really competitive.
It's going the way that the bracket's set up, and it is interesting that they've had a couple of these teams that have played really well as 12 seeds. I feel like part of that is because they want people to watch that 12-5 matchup. Just based off of what's happening, because again, I don't feel like Charleston is a 12 seed. I definitely don't feel like VCU is a 12 seed. Yeah, and these will be very popular upsets, I think, when you're looking at the 12-5, because I don't see, I mean, maybe Oral Roberts beats Duke. I could definitely see it with the way that they play. But I feel like the 12 seed now has just sort of become the teams with the best record that in any other circumstance would be 5 or above. Mm-hmm. And because of the conference they played in, they're just stuck at
agreed, yeah.
Which makes it really hard to pick these games.
Yeah, this is one of the more hard picking tournaments that we've had, I feel like.
Yeah, and there is always that chance of a team like St. Peter's last year making that deep run.
Yeah.
And it's something now, because of the fact that a lot of the top players are going overseas or to the G League first, or are staying for 4 years to develop their game instead of just going one and done like what's happened. Mm-hmm. Teams now that were considered maybe like automatic eliminators now have that depth that you don't realize unless you follow them all the way through that are going to cause problems for some of these younger teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where I think Oral Roberts is, with the fact that they made the run 2 years ago and still have the majority of that team. Yeah. When you look at a team like VCU, where they have a lot of seniors and that sort of thing, and when you look at teams like Kentucky even now is not really one that has a ton of younger players compared to what Cal was doing with one and done.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's almost become a thing of the past. And it's something that Kentucky had to work on and finally was able to develop late as the season went on. Because there was a while where it looked like Kentucky was not even going to be close to making the tournament. It was going to be an NIT team, especially after that loss to South Carolina. Yeah. And they've drastically improved since that point. Yeah. But that's pretty much So your championship, I don't think I got that.
I have Marquette versus Miami. Or, hold on. I might be wrong on that. Yeah, Marquette versus Miami.
And you have
Marquette.
Wow, that is...
Yeah.
That's going to be...
I'm ready for this Marquette team. I'm ready to see them.
That will be interesting. All right, so I've got the 1 and 2. I've got Bama and UCLA.
Yeah.
UCLA.
I've seen that a lot. Like, I don't think it's a bad pick at all. And again, like, even you have Duke in your Final Four. And I'm not even going to say that's a bad pick. Like,
no.
I think that's a good pick, and I literally have them losing in the first round. Yeah. That's how close.
No, and that's what I think the frustrating part is. It's not like one where it's the tournament is because of what's happened with a couple of these teams making deep runs. When you look at Loyola Chicago, St. Peter's, like before when you had teams sort of have upsets like this. Florida Gulf Coast is a great example. Yeah. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, or that's what it felt like. Now it's when that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity seems to happen almost every single tournament. Yeah. And that's what's made it so much scarier to try to pick the winner, because you have no idea what's going to happen.
And it feels like nowadays there's so much more pressure on a team that's a 2 seed, like, and that plays into the hands of those smaller teams that are like, F it, like, we have nothing to lose right now. We're going to play our balls to the wall. And then you have the teams like Kentucky against St. Peter's last year and Georgetown against FGCU that are like, we have to play at our top level or else this game's going to be really close.
Yeah, and I mean, the two Dramley brothers who played for St. Peter's transferred to LaSalle, which I mentioned, that's where I go to school. I got to see, like, it makes sense why they made it so deep. Because of the fact that you had guys that both of them were solid scorers. I think they averaged a little less than 10 points per game, but they got close to 6 rebounds or above per game. Yeah. And at least 3 assists. Yeah. Maybe a little bit less, but they were very all-around solid players, and that's what St. Peter's was based on. Yeah. And that's where I think it becomes harder to pick some of these teams because they have a lot. If your entire roster is based off of guys that can score 10 to 15 a night, maybe a little bit less, but will still do everything else even if you're not scoring, that's so much more lethal in the tournament than having a guy that can score 25 every night and do nothing else, because the moment that he stops scoring and you have no other pieces, you're going to fail. Yeah. And that's where I think people that follow the tournament all the time or follow college basketball even a little bit in the regular season will start to realize is, wow, some of these teams are super, super deep. Yeah. And can cause issues to some of these teams that you feel like would be more elite and just aren't. It's also become harder because schools like UNC and Villanova are no longer powerful. Right, yeah. And so those teams that, because I used to pick North Carolina to make it all the time in the tournament. And then even last year at the 8th seed, I still had them going pretty far. Yeah, same. But now you have Villanova that's out. Yeah. And now you have other schools like Duke that are now 4 and no longer are powerful. Yeah. So the power dynamics totally shifted to some of these smaller schools, which works in your favor, but also works for a team like Miami, who's just using that NIL deal to get the best players in the ACC, which, granted, pissed some people off, but there's a reason why they're a very popular pick in the Midwest. Yeah, agreed. All right, that's all I pretty much. Yeah, that's all. Nah, I'm good.
Okay, so before we wrap up here, I'm just gonna do really quick NBA takes. Yeah. So, teams that I'm buying and selling going into the postseason, I'll start in the Eastern Conference. I'm buying the Sixers. I'm buying the Bucks. I'm selling the Celtics. Agreed. So this is getting recorded on March 14th. So last night they lost to the AAU team in the West. You guys all know who I'm talking about. And Jason Tatum seemingly forgot how to shoot last night.
I know, yeah.
And he had a slump a couple weeks ago, and he did pick it back up, but now he had a really down game, and I can't really trust Tatum's bad nights for the rest of the Celtics to carry them to a win. And Jaylen Brown, Jason Brown, if I'm wrong, had 41 points.
43, actually.
43. Yeah. And he didn't even take the last shot. Right. Jason Tatum missed the driving layup. Yeah. If he's struggling to shoot and Jay Brown has 43 points, I want him taking the last shot. Yeah, agreed. But there's not that trust with him. And I think that will hold him back in a 7-game series if he doesn't play at his ultimate best. So I think the Bucks are the unanimous top seed in the East. Agreed. They are my pick for the finals. The only team I really see making noise with them is the Sixers or the Heat.
Yeah.
Moving over to the West, I'm selling the Nuggets.
Sold.
I'm selling the Suns if Kevin Durant isn't healthy, because we could talk about it all day. And then with Kevin Durant, they're arguably the best team in the league, but they gave up a lot of capital with the hopes that Kevin Durant will be healthy. And if he can't even do a layup line without getting hurt, how are they going to go far in the playoffs?
A grueling postseason.
Yeah, that team, it's not good without him. Like,
yeah.
CP3 has really regressed. He's almost scared to shoot at this point. Like, he's really taking pass first to a whole new level.
Agreed.
And Devin Booker can't do it all because, like, they lost a lot of depth.
Yeah.
Getting Kevin Durant.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm selling them. I'm selling the Mavericks.
Sold. I'm out too.
I'm selling
Memphis.
Nuggets. Yeah, I'm selling the Memphis Grizzlies because it doesn't look like Ja Morant's going to be back.
I want to say Clippers too. I want to say Clippers.
So who do you
I
think leads
disagree.
out the West
I
then?
disagree there. Okay, I will get to it in a second, but I do want to say I think Ja Morant, for years later, I think it's going to be really hard for guys to, like, look at him as the leader because of the shit that's happened to him recently.
Okay. Yeah.
And he just showed that he's, like, has really big lapses of judgment, and he is pretty immature up until this point, and I don't know if he can lead a young team. I would look to other guys like Desmond Bain to be the leader. And I think they're in a deep hole for years to come, but looking at this year, I'm buying the Lakers and I'm buying the Warriors.
Okay.
And I'm buying the Clippers only because there's really no team to stand up to them in the West.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I'm buying Golden State. That'll be, they're still my pick to go through the West. I kind of like the Lakers right now. Like,
yeah, the
way they've been playing without LeBron has been really well. And then I don't see how adding LeBron to any team makes them worse. Yeah. You know, or even like doesn't move the needle. Like, I think adding LeBron to that isn't going to disrupt anything that they have going on. That's pretty much what I'll say on that.
Yeah.
The Lakers really surprised me too, because like I always, like I said it multiple times on the show, like I hate how they go about operating their team. Like, it's all about top heaviness, and they did the complete opposite.
It seems like they flipped it at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
literally.
and now like that team really looks like the Brooklyn Nets with D'Angelo Russell, and you throw Anthony Davis and LeBron James will be back in time for the playoffs. Like,
I think people need to put some respect on Russell's name. Like, he's done this a couple times where his teammates seem to like rally around him and play better around him. Yeah. And he doesn't necessarily put up all the numbers. He doesn't necessarily do anything that flashy. And I'm not saying he's a star, really, but I think that he's just a guy that elevates teams.
Yeah, he's a very
I know Minnesota
player.
was kind of like iffy, but I don't think any of that fell on D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, no, he needs like a system where guys can like rally around him, because like he's a very systematic player, and he's been in a lot of bad situations. This is like the second, it's really early, but this is like the second good situation he's been in. And he's moved teams 5 times now.
To put it bluntly, he's a true point guard.
Yeah.
And that really helps a team, especially when you're making a playoff push in a conference that is not strong.
I still feel like the Nuggets could run through the West a little bit, even with the way the Lakers have been playing.
You see how they went out today, though?
I did, and that's the whole thing, is that they keep struggling against Eastern Conference teams and then beating up on the Western Conference ones.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where I'm sort of at with the Nuggets, where it's like, all right, fine, I've kind of accepted the fact that there's a great chance they'll win the West, even though I don't feel like they really deserve it. And whoever they face from the East are just going to get destroyed. Yeah. It doesn't. I mean, the fact that they lost to the Raptors by 15, that just tells me that if you go up against even the Celtics of the way they've been playing, they'll get run over.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. In a 7-game series, absolutely. So that's the only reason why I'm still on the Nuggets side a little bit, is because of how bad the West is.
Yeah,
and it's not really saying anything good about them. That's just sort of where. And I mean, the Lakers could absolutely make a run for sure. There's still enough time to do it. But I just feel like the Nuggets still have a more complete team at this point if you're comparing the two of them. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to waver off my Warriors pick strictly on the fact that, like, I've kind of been saying it where I was like, they just need to get healthy. Yeah. And then it seemed like they got healthy for a game, and then another thing came up, and yada, yada, yada. And now they're getting healthy at the right time. They just beat up on the injured Suns, granted.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, you can only play who's in front of you. And they looked really good. Curry doesn't look like he's taken a step back.
Yeah.
Clay had a sort of a resurgence. I mean, he's done it a couple times this year, but if he plays even half of the level that he was playing last night, I do think Golden State's going to run through the West.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I should put it better than that. Not run through. I think they'll get through the West. Yeah. And I still think that any of the top, I'll say 3, because I just want to leave it at Boston, Milwaukee, Philly.
Yeah.
Any of those 3 would beat Golden State in a final series.
Yeah. And I do want to say I better see the MVP ladder switch because Embiid has turned it up so much.
Yeah.
No, he
and
has.
This loss today on March 14th for the Nuggets was really embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like, this is a Raptors team that will probably not get to the playoffs. And yes, Jokic puts up, like, insane stats.
Yeah.
But it doesn't lead to, like, winning. And he needs, like, help from his teammates.
Yeah.
Like, he can't, like, will a team himself.
No.
And how does that make you MVP? Like, I completely agree with that. And, like, it sort of baits people into the narrative that he's a stat padder or empty stats, which I don't agree with. But at the same time, I'm not putting him on the level of Embiid and Giannis. I just can't do it. And especially the fact of where Embiid's level of play has gone to where Jokic's level of play has gone. Where we've seen a little drop from Jokic, and we've just seen a complete surge from Embiid.
Yeah.
He's been playing, this is his best month stretch ever in his whole career.
This late in the season,
yeah,
he's always usually hurt by this.
That's the thing. We're in mid-March. We're usually talking about when is Embiid coming back.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about Embiid hasn't had less than 30 points in like 7 games.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the Sixers are the hottest team.
Yeah.
In the East.
Yeah.
Which, again, this is a very top-heavy East team, so the fact that we're saying that about them is just crazy.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely, because I was the one person that said that Jokic should win MVP, I've definitely changed my mind with the way that things have gone at this point.
Yeah.
Even if Jokic finishes with a double-double, there's no reason for me to say that Embiid should not be MVP, especially if the Sixers finish in front of either the Celtics or Bucks at the 2 seed.
Agreed.
They easily could. They're 1.5 games from first right now.
I think that because of the way the Nuggets got off to a start and because of how bad the West is and how Jokic's stats have just looked better overall compared to Embiid's, even though Embiid is a much better scorer this season, I think the Sixers would have to finish top 2 in order for Embiid to be considered MVP.
I can see it.
Yeah. But it's just like annoying because like you said it like Embiid has like somehow played at a better level than his last 2 MVP-esque seasons. And that sounds crazy because like I said, like going into this season, I didn't think Embiid would play a better year just because like how great he played last year. But like Jokic is like great, but he kind of like it's stagnating like his years. It's not like he's on like a linear path of like playing better. He's just like doing what he does consistently. And I'm not saying that's like bad at all, but like how many times are you just going to keep awarding the same thing?
And that's where I think it's sort of interesting when we talk about the baseball MVP of last year with Ohtani and Judge. Because Ohtani put up even better numbers the year before, but it's because that he did something similar from 2 years that's why with Judge he did something that no one had ever seen before. Yeah. The way that Embiid is playing, we've not seen this from a center ever. A very, very long time.
No, I'll say it right now. We have not seen a center that is able to score
from anywhere on the court.
On anyone. The way he dribbles, the way he can pound anyone inside, there has never, ever been a center.
His defense is also just he's picked up his defense so much more than years previous. Yeah. And that's not to knock his defense before, because he could have easily been nominated Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
But the fact that his defense is now winning them games, that Memphis game where he had that game-winning block, and then forced a turnover to pass, or him and Harden got the first turnover. But the fact that he stepped it up that much to say, no, I'm going to will this team to a 1 seed. And it's made him a better player. It's made the Sixers better. And it's made me think that he should be MVP.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Jokic's defense.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's really
There's a reason
good.
why they are losing to some of these teams.
Yeah.
It's not because the guard play.
They don't have any defensive players.
No, and
they don't.
No, but that's the whole thing about the West. Any of them have that good?
Right, yeah, no. And even, like, do any of them have that good of an offense where you're like, their offense is just going to overpower Denver.
No,
I don't think so.
The only team that could have was Dallas, and they just have not meshed. It's
Mm-hmm.
the whole issue that everyone thought of was you have two ball-dominant guys
and
sharing the court.
And now they can't stay healthy.
And they can't stay healthy, and when they're on the court, neither of them can play defense.
Agreed.
So, the Mavericks trade, that didn't work. None of these trades, the only partner of these trades that seem to work out okay is the Nets.
I know.
Somehow.
No, I know. The Nets look really good. Next year they could add one piece and be there.
Please don't be a piece of bringing two guys together that will eventually destroy your entire. There's no reason to do that. But that was the whole thing. There was no reason to do that before. To tear down the entire roster that they had.
There
was these two guys. And it didn't work out. Where I feel like if they kept the roster they have and they made that playoff run where they lost to the Sixers, and kept the majority of those bench players, D'Lo, and they just signed one more guy, I think they would have been okay.
And I did fail to mention the Kings. I am selling the Kings too, just from an experience standpoint.
Okay.
And now that I'm talking about the West, I am kind of realizing that they might just be a byproduct of such a weak West, and that's why they're standing out. And let's say you plug them into the West 3 years ago, I think they would be an 8th seed at best.
I agree.
No, 100%. But I also think that because they're a byproduct, and this is what I said about Memphis earlier this year, was that the West was so bad a team could just sneak through. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to be Memphis. I still did up until the whole John Morant suspension. I can see that being the Kings now. There's no reason why not.
Yeah.
Because of, it definitely is because it's a byproduct of how bad the West is. That doesn't mean that you should just automatically rule them out because they would be the 8th seed 3 years ago, because now they're the 3 seed because of how bad the West is.
Oh, no, I'm saying it from experience. They have no one that's been there.
And I totally understand that, but that was the whole knock on Memphis, too. Mm-hmm. Is that they had the 1 year of playoff run, and that was it. Well, now there's an unexperienced team that is playing in a weak division, and it's not like there's anyone saying, this team has so much more veteran experience that they'll knock them out. And when you look at it, the teams with veteran experience are Dallas and Denver and
Clippers.
The Lakers and Clippers, none of which have made deep playoff runs in the last couple of years.
Yeah, right. I'm not really buying or selling the Kings. I feel like I'm just somewhere in the middle.
I want to see how they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just want to see it.
Then decide for next year.
Yeah, I just want to see it.
But I could either see them I could see them being knocked out in the first round, or I could see them go in the final. That's where they're at, and that's what's so fun about this Kings team, is that we're finally talking about them potentially making it to the finals. Right. This is not where they've been in the last 15 years.
And there was that Suns team in 2021 where they literally didn't have any real playoff experience. Like CP3 had never been to a Western Conference Finals, and then most of those guys hadn't even been to the playoffs. Yeah. And they kind of went through and won the West. And I'm not saying it's going to happen with Sacramento, but it could. It definitely could, especially in a year like this.
Yeah, I'm just excited though, because in past years, I've consistently been able to predict who's going to win what series at an 85-90% accuracy, but we could see upsets, especially in the West.
100%. 100%.
I think more in the West. I think the East is pretty solid.
Up until the second round, I feel like.
Yeah.
The Knicks could upset whoever they play. The Knicks.
Oh, yeah.
I think they can.
They could.
But they have to get through Cleveland. Probably on a road series.
I can see them beating Cleveland.
I could see it, but it's just going to be tough on the road. It could
be a toss-up if it's either in the 4 or 5, if it's either the Cavs, Knicks, or Nets. That could be a potential.
Yeah, I could see the Heat being the Sixers if they match up that way.
Well, the Heat are just always a very dangerous matchup for the Sixers. It's just how the way it's worked out.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's different. Maybe it's different this year, but I just don't. They're just a very dangerous matchup.
And along those lines, too, I think the Sixers are the most dangerous matchup for Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee wants the Sixers in the conference finals rather than the conference semis. Yeah. Because we've seen this year, the Sixers just match up really well with them and play their best ball almost all the time against Milwaukee. And I know the playoffs are a different monster.
That's why I think they need to get that first seed so you don't play.
So if
Celtics in the second round.
If Milwaukee gets New York or Cleveland, I think they run through a sweep.
And that's where I think that's what the Sixers' biggest issue has been the Celtics. Yeah. And they haven't been able to figure that out. Yeah. And I think they're going to have to get past them, and that means they have to get the 1 seed. Hope that the Celtics lose to the Bucks, and that's the matchup you get in the semifinals. In the finals. Yeah, or in the conference finals.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. So I think that'll do it for this episode. We'll catch you next Saturday at 2 p.m. Yeah. All right. See you next time.